what is your favorite trade you've ever hit in crypto, or the most memorable one? It doesn't have to be the greatest return, doesn't have to be just one that is best
Oh
in the company.
boy, that's a great question.
That is a great question.
One of the most memorable ones, I think of a bunch of the NFT trades just because it was so dumb and like it had no business. I had no business having any of minting those stupid NFTs working out. I got really lucky with one of the art blocks mints, and I minted the single rarest edition of this entire art blocks collection. This was back in summer 2021 when like people were putting boatloads into art blocks, and I put up a sale offer for this NFT and just kind of left it, and it was like exorbitantly high versus everything else. And right around the top, someone.
Well, thanks for joining us today, Zane. It's myself, Monty, also known as Whitetail sometimes, research lead at AB Research, and we have Mark, CEO of kind of AB Holdings, the guy that runs a show, also known as Rocket Pilot. So here, great. So Zane,
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks for joining us today. Mark, thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, to hop right in, maybe how did you get into crypto, and how did you get your first job? I know a lot of people are on the internet. I was kind of on the internet in the background, trying to figure out how to make an impact, and just kind of that's a good place to start.
Yeah, I stumbled onto Bitcoin back in 2013. I was playing Minecraft, and I was 15 at the time, and someone told me about this Minecraft server that was a casino and used Bitcoin as the currency. And I was ecstatic to find out there was a way to gamble online at 15. So that's how I kind of was first antiquated with Bitcoin, with crypto. And back in those days, pretty much everyone congregated on the Bitcoin Talk forums, which I did as well. I made a forum account, and there was a lot of micro work that was going on, even more so than there is now, I would say, where I could test someone's website and get paid $20 of Bitcoin and do all these little things. And ultimately, that graduated into me starting to do freelance writing. So pretty early on, like 2015 is when I would say like I started working in the space, and it was doing freelance work at different like Bitcoin crypto news sites, writing blog posts, technical articles, that kind of thing.
Hell yeah, that's dope. That's a little bit more innocent than my origin stories on the Silk Road. We could pretend that I was buying some Minecraft credits on there.
There you go.
But that's super cool. I think like just to dig into your origin a little bit more. Did you have like a any sort of technical or economic or finance background at all, or did you go to school for that at all, or just became interested in the core kind of concepts of Bitcoin once you read the white papers and whatnot?
I think when I was young, I was naturally really into like economies in video games. I was always drawn to the games that had like trading with other players and notions of virtual economies. Way back in the day when sorry?
RuneScape at all? I know that's a big one.
No RuneScape, but I never really got into RuneScape, but I played a lot of Roblox back in the day, which had kind of like an internal Forex exchange where there was an order book you could trade the two currencies between. I think there's one currency now, but there used to be two. And I kind of taught myself how to do like arbitrage trading, like trading the spread. And they had like limited items that fluctuated in price, and I did that kind of stuff. And then I played another MMO that no one's probably heard of called Puzzle Pirates, which was the gameplay was puzzles, but it was similarly very economically focused. Like it was all about trading. The game had its own like central exchange and that kind of thing. So I was always kind of drawn to that, and so I think naturally I was interested in crypto as soon as I learned about it, but like formally I didn't have a background in that kind of stuff.
Hell yeah, that's awesome. Monty, you're still pretty big on Roblox today, aren't you?
Yeah, it's half my 9 to 5. Farming goal to sell to 14-year-olds or whatever, whoever's on that.
There you go.
Right on.
Parents' credit card. Great. Well, that's an interesting background. I feel like that's how a lot of people got into space. Personally, I played a lot of WoW, so crushing the auction house there.
Yeah, there you go.
Real rabbit hole of people getting in. Fast forwarding towards today, you have a pretty interesting role. Bloq is, at least in my opinion, one of the more underappreciated companies into space. You guys touched upon a lot of stuff. It's kind of interesting that you work with what I would consider people to be OGs who might have a different perspective on the space, but at the same time, you're interacting with kind of new emerging protocols. So how do you kind of maybe first touch upon your role and then how you kind of are at the intersection of kind of those two kind of pieces?
Yeah, definitely. So I work at a company called Bloq. I started working with them right when I graduated college. I graduated into COVID. I was transitioning out of freelance. So I was doing like tech writing and stuff initially for them. But I graduated into more of an executive role. Bloq is at a very high level, this kind of crypto umbrella company with all these different projects. There's Web3 gaming, mining, a lot of DeFi. DeFi is where I spend my focus on. And the company was founded by Jeff Garzik, who's one of the like 3 people who was a core Bitcoin dev alongside Satoshi. So one of the very original Bitcoin developers, and Matthew Rozak, who's one of the first kind of crypto angel investor type figures in the space. So they predate me by several more years in the space. So yeah, with that, I think Bloq has a bit of a different perspective than what you normally see in crypto. It's a more mature company, a more mature culture. The goals and the time scales and the horizons are kind of on a larger scale. We're not necessarily trying to ape in front of every new meta and spin up and spin down a bunch of different flavor of the month projects. It's much more driven around a longer term thesis of crypto being an integral part and continuing to be a bigger integral part of kind of the society at large, and situating ourselves to best fit into that.
Nice. And I'm curious, Zane, how did you first get in contact with Bloq, and how did you kind of hear about them? What drew you guys together?
Yeah, so at the point I started working with Bloq, I already had 5 years of crypto experience. So I had bylines at different news sites. Most notably, I wrote a research series for the Bloq. I had experience working on the team side of several projects, still in a freelance capacity, but more serious type roles. And then I just happened to be in a crypto Telegram group where one of my colleagues was looking for a tech writer, and I reached out, and it happened to work out.
Hell yeah, you're kind of blowing my mind. I'm just realizing that probably some of the early tech writers and Bitcoin writers, that's going to be some of the most profitable writing in the history for the guys that are getting paid in Bitcoin in 2013, 2015 times. So that's beautiful.
Yeah, Vitalik's origin was journalism. He was
Bitcoin magazine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Shouts out to our leader, Vitalik.
Yep.
Great. So with Vesper and Metronome and DeFi, a lot of kind of the stuff, at least from my perspective, correct me if I'm wrong here, is investing in other protocols that might be, and then kind of moving the weights around depending on the yield that's out there.
Mm-hmm.
Who is, like, Bloq is a docs team, they're US based. Who are these other people? Who is the typical person that spins up one of these underlying protocols? And how do you, as kind of the strategy lead, What are the boxes you have to check to get comfortable with one of these kind of new emerging protocols?
Yeah. So I guess to like contextualize, so Bloq's two primary DeFi protocols are Vesper and Metronome, of which I'm responsible for a lot of the day-to-day leadership, decision-making, strategy. Vesper is a yield aggregator, which deposit your different crypto assets, and it goes into a vault that earns more of that crypto asset. Metronome is a synthetics protocol that lets you take out synthetic assets as loans. And Metronome services Vesper vaults for loans. So you can deposit into Vesper with your stablecoin, with your ETH, and then you can take out a loan on Metronome, and you can do whatever with that loan. You can use it for whatever spending. You can go trade with it. What most people do is they actually loop it back. So you can have, for example, a stable coin collateral that's earning yield. You borrow a synthetic stable coin, so you don't have to worry about liquidation so much, and you can swap it over and over for more of the collateral and kind of multiply your exposure to the yield.
So similar to platforms like Maker, Compound.
Yeah, so you can compare Metronome to Maker. The difference between Metronome and Maker is that Metronome has multiple synthetic assets. So Maker is just a synthetic stablecoin. Metronome has a synthetic stablecoin and a synthetic ETH. And Metronome also has the ability to support other synthetic assets. So that gives us more freedom to kind of better service other assets. In particular, right now, there's a lot of ETH yield farming that's taking place. If someone were to loop up using Maker, they would also be swapping for ETH and taking a directional bet on ETH going up, which they may want to do that or they may not.
Very cool.
Gotcha. And then I guess for the underlying protocols with Vesper and Metronome, how do you get comfortable with kind of newer emerging protocols that might have very attractive yield, but if the yield's only for a day or not worth the risk, kind of how do you source those?
Yeah, definitely. So the way that Vesper works is that each pool each asset has one pool, and that pool maps to any number of strategies, and the pool can add more strategies, and they can also remove old strategies. Strategies interact with different DeFi protocols, and they could just deposit where the assets go somewhere else. They're parked. If there's extra tokens to claim, they claim the tokens and swap them. The strategy could be providing liquidity. So, for example, you have a USDC pool. We take it to Curve and we pair the USDC with Frax. So we're kind of swapping and LPing, but same concept. Money's deposited, it's generating more. And then sometimes we do borrowed strategies as well, particularly with the non-stable pools. So I will deposit my ETH to Aave, I'll take out a stablecoin loan, and then I'll go do those other types of strategies with the outstanding stablecoin loan. In terms of what types of protocols we interact with, it's a function of a handful of different variables. A lot of it is like market best practices. There's an understood kind of blue chip tier of protocols. These are protocols that are well battle tested, have had a lot of TVL for a long time, have kind of earned their stripes. And those are protocols we can be comfortable with. And so those are protocols like Aave and Compound. And then beyond that, if we're going to branch out further and interact with newer protocols, a lot of it is manual work to try to like assess the quality and like the rigor of the team. Most of the time when exploits happen, it's because bad code was written. Sometimes there's exit scams, but like specific to DeFi, we're not far enough out on the risk curve where like people are rugging our strategies. It's that code gets exploited. So understanding the quality of the code, audits that went into those underlying protocols. Some of it also is kind of understanding the architecture, like certain protocols are riskier than other certain types of protocols. All of that kind of gives us a holistic idea of how we're managing our risk.
Yeah, I think that feeds kind of right into, a couple of our next questions about risk management, about security, and how you guys manage that. Do you guys have a forensics team that's kind of, on call watching these bigger contracts that you guys deploy, or what is kind of, Bloq's approach to security and making sure that there's as minimal smart contract risk as possible. I mean, of course, we know in crypto it's like it's still very much the Wild West, but would love to hear some of the measures you guys are taking to try to keep funds safe.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll break up the question into two parts. Like, one is, what do we do when things are working as intended, and then two is, what do we do when things are not working as intended. So in terms of regular day at the office, a lot of the security is baked into the protocol itself. So, for example, the way that Vesper is designed is that it's it's non-custodial, which means a person, myself or otherwise, is not like grabbing those funds and then putting them and manually moving them around. A user can always withdraw their fund, can always deposit and withdraw out. So they're not forfeiting custody of their assets per se. What does happen in the pool is that there are all these different smart contracts that stipulate only that funds can do this or only that funds can do that. So if there is a strategy that says, let's deposit into Aave, the smart contract only has the capacity to take the funds out of the front pool and move them into Aave. And then a user can still always pull out from there themselves if they want to. The way that looks is pool strategies have different weights. So we could say 10% of the funds go here, 20% of the funds go here, so on and so forth. And then there is a lot of automation in terms of upkeeping that. So we have bot networks that will interact with the strategies to kind of checkpoint them and say the strategy earned this much yield. It's going to realize that yield and then pass it back to the pool. So depositors realize that those earnings, and that generally makes up like the standard architecture. So there's security in the sense that there's minimal margin of human error. Essentially, there's little that a person like myself or otherwise could do to like screw things up.
Right, love that.
So that's when things are good. When things are not good is the more interesting part. Unfortunately, a lot of exploit-related stuff in DeFi is reactive just because it kind of has to be. The funds are safe until they're not. And so a lot of what our defense looks like in terms of if an exploit does happen in one of our strategies, in one of the protocols that we're interacting with, is we have a very robust kind of response process. There is kind of a public good security group in crypto called SEAL Team, which essentially is a collection of all these different experts, forensics experts, negotiators, social engineering types, who essentially jump to the case. And so it's like a bat signal. If something happens, we get them in right away. And
this is like the neighborhood watch. It's not paid, it's volunteer.
Exactly. Yeah. And the benefit of that is now it's hard. If you get money in crypto from stealing or exploiting, it's really hard to actually cash it out and be able to use it. You're not going to be able to go through any of the centralized exchanges because your wallet will immediately get flagged and blacklisted in different monitoring tools. And so the mission is make sure those funds stay on chain where we can see them, and then two, try to negotiate it and try to encourage the the attacker to give back most of the funds as a bounty or otherwise. I won't get too into the details of like the tricks because you wouldn't want a bad person to hear the tricks. But the idea is to keep the money on chain and encourage them to negotiate. And sometimes that has a good outcome. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it happens very quickly. Sometimes it takes a long time.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Can I dig into the SEAL team real quick? Because I have obviously being a portfolio manager, just a big interest in cybersecurity. And originally too, when Monty sent over our notes, he mentioned the SEAL team, and I didn't know that was an actual thing on chain. So how did you hear about those guys? And do they have any affiliation with the Bloq, or is it just it's like an open sourced group that is really just helping to fight crime on chain?
Yeah, they just jump in wherever they're needed. So they're not affiliated. I don't know if they get funding anywhere. It's typically people who are some type of professional in the space already, and then they're additionally kind of volunteering their expertise. There's the Euler exploit is a good kind of post-mortem to check out because it was resolved and the attacker actually came out and revealed himself and tried to explain his motives and stuff like that. So you can the whole timeline is out. I think they might even have a documentary that they're working on, but that was one of the bigger exploits. It was like 200 million. The guy ended up giving all of the money back. So that was a good one.
Yeah, that's super interesting. We'll dig into that and pull that up for the audience as well. Sorry, go ahead, Monty. Didn't mean to cut you off.
On the topic of hacks, what percentage of DeFi hacks do you think are inside jobs? I know we had kind of certain audit kind of scanned over the past month. It's hard to prove someone is bad at code. So I'm just curious.
Come on, we're all conspiracy theorists here, right?
I think in terms of high profile exploits, I think that used to happen more than it does now, because now you steal whatever $20 million, it's going to be it really is a pain in the ass to actually get it off and be able to use it and be free and clear. 3-4 years ago, I don't think that was necessarily the case. I know there are some big exploits that people kind of theorize that, this was definitely, so-and-so was behind this. In terms of the lower quality stuff where 6 figures, $1 million goes missing, I'm sure a lot of those are inside jobs or planned attacks and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like it's just too easy to miss one character or insert one extra word and tell your buddy. I don't know. I'm not a coder, so this is all me just kind of theorizing, but I could see that being a honeypot. Kind of looking at, let's say, the DeFi renaissance that's happening. I mean, we kind of go in two ways here, whether we're looking at kind of new protocols like Base-Swap or Aerodome, or kind of the old Maker, Aave, Uniswap fee switch. Happy to kind of let you take in either direction, but it's just kind of after 3 or 4 years of kind of just down only against ETH, could be time to have a turnaround here.
Yeah, I definitely. I mean, I'm biased, of course. I'm working in DeFi. If I wasn't bullish DeFi, I wouldn't be. But I over the past few years, there's a bunch of stuff that I thought would happen that has been happening, and so I think we're totally going to see at some point this wave of just everything is benefiting, everything is catching on. There's so much interconnectedness between DeFi protocols, where if a certain group of protocols are doing well, it helps everyone else out. To speak in more specific terms, I was really excited about what happened with liquid staking tokens originally. And just very briefly, you can stake your ETH and get an APY. Liquid staking tokens are kind of a service to that on your behalf, and then you keep the receipt of that token. that token can now go get used in DeFi. And instead of working with naked ETH, you have this token that, for all intents and purposes, is ETH, but also earns you 3-4% APY. And so one very specific material outcome of that is you can look on Aave and Compound, and the cost to borrow ETH is always around at least 3%, and the APY you get if you deposit is always around 2.5%. Before LSTs, it was like 0 on both sides. That's one specific example where we DeFi generally has come up with a new primitive that makes existing capital more efficient, and now everything that's using ETH can use this instead, and every gadget having TVL that's more productive automatically makes the gadget better. So we've seen just off of that a ton more lending market activity, a ton more borrow activity. We interact with LSTs with Vesper and Metronome, where we have yield strategies on top of the LSTs. So even if we're only earning a couple percent APY, we're doing it on top of the staking APY, and that makes it a lot more powerful. We've continued to get more and more of those primitives. Now we have the liquid restaking tokens, which is another new primitive that is even more productive and more powerful. We have these new basis trade protocols, which is like Athena, where they are generating yield off of centralized exchanges, and that unlocks a ton of TVL that can generate a ton of yield that couldn't before. And the more and more of that we continue to get, that continues to happen, the more that's beneficial for everyone. I do think the old guard is in a really good position because they've already gotten to this point of they've been through the fire, they've survived, they've figured out how to generate revenue. Each new thing that comes on top makes it easier to do so. I think Maker is a really good example of that. You're seeing for a long time they couldn't get borrow rates over like 1%, 2%, 3%, and now earlier this year when there was all kinds of crazy L2 stuff going on, they were charging like 15-18% to borrow, and people were paying it, and that's not something that a couple years ago anyone would have predicted. So I think as long as we keep seeing more and more of these types of innovations, and I think we will, I think on the roadmap ahead there's a lot of upcoming innovations beyond LRTs and basis trades now that's going to continue to put DeFi in a better and better position.
Yeah, right on. I love the prediction. Obviously, everyone loves predictions in the crypto space. That's probably why Polymarket's blowing up right now. I was reading some of your old pieces. Zane, you're also known as Jeff, right? Green Jeff Capital. Hilarious TikTok, by the way. We'll talk about that in a bit. I love your success there. I mean, I just discovered you, thanks to Monty, and you got some good content there. I like the lack of a filter. That I think the people need that. But was seeing you wrote a kind of a prediction piece about 2024 at the end of 2023. And it was, going strong into kind of everything you just said, like, LSTs, staking derivatives, and really a little bit seemed kind of centered around ETH, stocking up on ETH and, stocking up on as maximizing the yield that you can get, which genuinely aligns, pretty well with our strategy here at AB. We're very big ETH bulls. We're trying to outperform ETH constantly. We do that by holding ETH, and trading, doing some other things as well. But, I'm curious to see kind of, let's talk 2025, right? We're coming to just midway through 2024, but, what is some kind of further out big picture alpha that you think 2025 has in store that's, not maybe just very at the beginning sites of right now, but you think is definitely going to roll out very big, probably in about 6 to 12 months from now?
That's a good question. So what I said for 2022 going into 2023, because I wrote an article that was very focused on LSTs when they were still kind of taboo. That ended up being good. 2023 going into 2024, I believe it was focused on like get on chain, yield farm. If people who've done that have been doing well, I've been doing well doing that. Farming the L2s, farming the LRTs, doing leverage strategy. That's all been great. Going into next year, I think what we will see is we have all of this TVL in restaking right now, and there's tons of capital around it. These protocols have whatever billions, tens of billions of TVL. They're trading at, I don't know, hundreds of millions, if not more. But the product itself hasn't really come to light yet. What's really exciting about restaking, just in a very broad general sense, is there's more and more of these different networks, different L2s. They're specializing more and more, which some people are saying it's a fad. I disagree. I think having specialized chains is something we're going to see more of, not less of. All of these networks, particularly if they're successful and they grow, they need to secure themselves. They need to have network security so that people aren't able to abuse the network and run attacks and all that stuff. And the inception of Bitcoin till now, all that we know is you pay your own keep. So Bitcoin's paying out so many millions of dollars in mining fees. ETH is paying so many millions of dollars in staking fees. What restaking does is essentially the people who are already staking and securing ETH, they can simultaneously do work to secure other chains. What that means is in the same theme of ETH being more productive, ETH staking can now earn extra revenue on top of regular staking APY. And for the networks that are paying that security fee, it's a lot cheaper than doing it themselves. So it's, I think when we start to see different L2s that take advantage of restaking and they're successful, that's super good for more and more ETH yield. It's also super good for very capital efficient extension of block space and throughput and capacity to do stuff on chain. And I think by at least by this time next year, we'll start to see what the really successful restaked chains are. And they're going to be supplying a lot of additional yield to the people who are staking their ETH. Yeah. And I think that's going to be really exciting.
Any in specific that you like that you want to shout out? You know, do you like Eigenlayer? Do you like Karak? Can we expect the Bloq to make any innovations in the restaking game?
I think it's still a little early. There's a few different players. I know Eigenlayer is the big one, of course. Symbiotic is one that people also are really into. It's a similar service as Eigenlayer, but my impression is they're taking more of a business first approach. So Eigenlayer is kind of TVL first. Like and maybe this was intentional, maybe it wasn't, but Eigenlayer has so many billions of TVL. And there are people that are signing up to use it, but there's probably a surplus of TVL versus what the demand is. I believe Symbiotic is trying to do it the other route of let's onboard all these businesses that are going to use the product and drive TVL off of that. I don't know which L2s are particularly exciting in the restaking space. I will say internally at Bloq, we have an L2 that we're working on. And not myself, but people elsewhere in the company. That's a Bitcoin L2, so it exists on top of ETH. It's EVM, but it also exists on top of Bitcoin. So you can do stuff like in a non-custodial fashion, migrate your Bitcoin to this L2. There's some different dev stuff you can do. Like you could do a Bitcoin DEX that's kind of executed on the L2. I believe they are going to have some restaking elements, particularly on the Bitcoin side. That could be super exciting, particularly because all these things I'm explaining with ETH don't exactly exist for Bitcoin yet. A year from now, they might. We might see all of a sudden there's tens, hundreds of billions of idle Bitcoin that don't do anything because there's nothing to do with it. And there's going to be stuff to do with it. So I think that could be exciting. That could be where a lot of the industry's focus is the next year or so.
How much of your time or innovation do you think will emerge out of, let's say, DeFi on Bitcoin or DeFi on Solana versus kind of the original DeFi on Ethereum, which has historically been the center of innovation? Have you kind of, how much of your time do you spend on other, or outside the EVM, let's say that? And then have you seen any kind of new primitives come there, or is it still the thought leaders, mostly Ethereum and the EVM?
Yeah, I don't spend much time outside of EVM. That might be short-sighted of me. Way back in the day, before ETH was like popular, there was altcoin stuff on Bitcoin, and I participated. And I was really into Counterparty, which is like an asset layer on top of Bitcoin. I have over 100 rare pepes, which were like the main. NFT wasn't a term that was invented yet, but they were essentially the main counterparty NFTs on Bitcoin.
You had a Dash masternode?
I didn't get into Dash, but I'm familiar with it. And what I know from that experience is like the UX is really not good, at least on Bitcoin. I've done some of the newer stuff. The UX is still really not good. EVM is a lot better. Solana fans argue that Solana is better, but I don't think the improvement in UX in Solana justifies essentially rebuilding DeFi from scratch. I think like there is so much maturity, so much of a running start on ETH DeFi or EVM DeFi that it's going to continue to be where things go. And I think instead of having a lot of DeFi on Bitcoin, it'll be a lot of Bitcoin coming to EVM and doing DeFi there.
Yeah, I think that's very well said about Solana. We'll see. Those sleek gradient colors really do attract the smooth brains. But no, I mean, shouts out to Solana. I think they're doing some awesome stuff. But I completely agree. It's like if we're talking about really the global settlement layer for trillions of dollars, I do think that a bit more than just nice design and retail adoption could be required.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I also think like in the theme of having more specialized chains, maybe Solana and their phone and all of their mobile first UX does mean they're the normie friendly place where people go to gamble. And I don't say that as like condescending. Like I think crypto is the greatest casino of all time. I think mankind has been gambling since the beginning of time. That's a huge use case. And I could very well see like when fellas want to go gamble, they do it on Solana, and more DeFi focused stuff stays on Ethereum.
Yeah, I almost, just not to get into too big of a side tangent, but it's really interesting, like a theme that I've just been kind of seeing in the past couple of weeks is almost like Solana kind of, I mean, clearly it's sort of taking the third biggest, like place, right? Maybe the third place medal for just the whole ecosystem, but it's almost seeming like it's starting to get known to a lot of people to be the sort of meme zone. And like there's always been, Bitcoin's on top, followed by ETH, kind of followed by, everything else. I mean, maybe depending on when you got in, it was Bitcoin versus altcoins. Then it kind of transitioned to Bitcoin versus Ethereum versus altcoins. Then it kind of seemed like, okay, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and then, meme coins or, just whatever else is funny, viral, going on at the time. It sort of seems like Solana is almost becoming the umbrella for the everything else industry, like the memes, the viralness, and the kind of, I guess, more mid-curve plays. But I don't know. It's interesting how that's shaping up. I was just thinking out loud here randomly.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Sorry.
I mean, no one wants to pay. ETH gas has been pretty good lately, but still, like, even if you're paying like 10 cents for a transaction fee, there's a whole universe of use cases where 10 cents doesn't fly.
Yeah, I mean, even using, I'm a user, I guess disclaimer, I'm a user investor in Metronome and Vesper. Maybe we should start with that. But I've been using it on Base a lot more than Ethereum. And Ethereum gas fees are cheap, but Base are 1-2 cents. I can unwind my whole position in 2 minutes for like 10-15 cents. When on Ethereum, it's $10, and that makes all
Definitely. Yeah.
Kind of on a different note here. What is your favorite trade you've ever hit in crypto, or the most memorable one? It doesn't have to be the greatest return. Doesn't have to be just one that is best.
Oh boy, that's a great question.
That is a great question.
One of the most memorable ones, I think of a bunch of the NFT trades just because it was so dumb and like it had no business. I had no business having any of minting those stupid NFTs working out. I got really lucky with one of the art blocks mints, and I minted the single rarest edition of this entire art blocks collection. This was back in summer 2021 when like people were putting boatloads into art blocks, and I put up a sale offer for this NFT and just kind of left it, and it was like exorbitantly high versus everything else. And right around the top, someone took the offer, and I sold it for a stupid amount, and it's probably worth like, I don't know, 2% or 10% of what it's worth now is probably like just a fraction of what it was. So
sounds like a great trade.
That's a fun one of like one single JPEG selling for that much is like even more exciting than, oh, I have this bag of tokens that are selling for this much. It wasn't necessarily like my biggest trade, but it was a very memorable one.
Yeah, I mean, all you need is one buyer, right? As long as you're not the one buyer.
As long as it's not me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. My most memorable trade is also flipping an NFT. Just some feeling about buying or minting something really low and selling it. That's like, I think the illiquidity of it just makes it more memorable versus just like hitting sell on kind of the order book.
Yeah, it's like it's pumping, and then it's dead or it doesn't die. Yeah, NFTs were fun. I really enjoyed Mooncats. The little like pixelated cats. They were like an early ETH collection that was forgotten, and then like people found out about them again one day and were like minting them all out. And I was too late to mint any of them, but people in the Discord were posting like these like text documents of, here's all these cats that are for sale. And if you were able to like go to the contract directly, which I had the knowledge to do, you could buy up all these cats for cheap. And I bought like 10 of them, and they were all early cats. They were all like whatever year it was, 2017 or 2018.
So are you not CryptoKitties, right? This is something different?
No, not CryptoKitties, a different one.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm still waiting for this to happen to CryptoKitties so I can recover about 20 ETH.
I don't know with CryptoKitties. Because the devs didn't have a great run. They were the Top Shot guys, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Kind of just been missing.
Yeah, let me know if you guys want to buy any.
I'm all right.
No, that's awesome though. I think NFTs are. I think it's just such a different sector that it's like it'll have its space. It still does have its space. Gonna play out like the rest of crypto. 90%, maybe in that space 98% will be trash, but there's definitely still room for cool stuff.
Yeah, I think like as a tech innovation, like the notion of an NFT has a lot of interesting opportunities, and I think a lot of people are using NFTs in interesting ways. What we do at Vesper Metronome and Velodrome and Aerodrome do this as well, is when you, just as one example, when you lock up your tokens, you get an NFT that contains your lockup. So those tokens remain locked; they're out of circulation, but the rights associated with it are transferable. So if I want to sell my locked tokens, I can sell the NFT to someone else. That's not like a JPEG use case, but it is a uniquely unlocked by NFTs interesting financial primitive.
And this is kind of the more, I don't want to say important than the JPEGs, but this is the more boring, actual kind of real world, tangible use case that doesn't get the media attention, but is part of the plumbing that is essential. You touched upon it briefly with kind of just setting an arbitrarily high price target for the art blocks mint. How do you think about kind of exiting your positions? And just not financial advice, but obviously the market gets overhyped, gets underhyped at some point. How, like when you set that unrealistic price target that hit, what kind of goes into that, and kind of how do you think about getting in front of kind of all the hype so that you can sell to someone when they're buying all the hype?
Yeah. That what I did there, I typically don't do, and if I try to do that, it typically doesn't work out. So that was a one-off success. How I typically look at everything, and this is also my experience in one, I've been in this space for a long time. I like being in this space. I plan to continue to be in this space. So my time horizon is very long compared to other people. Two, having been in this space for a while, I've had a number of wins. I'm well off. I'm not struggling for my next meal. And so with that, my perspective is a lot around like staying consistent, staying unemotional, staying like putting myself in a position where I play a lot of poker, like not tilt myself. And so if I like, I never want to sell 100% of something, because if I sell 100% and it goes up, that's brutal. I might lose more money that way. But I always want to hold on to at least a little bit of anything that I like or anything that I have liked. And if something's going up, I like to sell a little bit here, sell a little bit there. If I want to enter something, I'll buy a little bit. If it goes down more, I'll buy more. If I buy a little and it goes up, great. I wish I had more, but at least I picked right. So I try to, like, as much as possible, limit the capacity for me to like make a big blunder.
Smart.
Word of the wise, the DeFi specialist says dollar cost average.
And don't sell 100%. I like that.
Yeah, and I also, like, back in the day, way back in the day, it was like you were trading altcoins. Like your goal was always to have more Bitcoin than you started with. Always trade for more Bitcoin. I like ETH more now. So my mindset now is also like, I'm always working to get more ETH. And when I have ETH, stick it in a yield farm so I keep my ETH, I earn more of it. Like I want to be having more ETH, more stable coin, more dollars is good too, of course. Get more ETH, get more stable coin, and always try to be like protecting that capital. You can gamble the yield or whatever, but try to grow it. Try not to risk the principal, or not the principal, but try not to risk your protected stack if you can.
Yeah, right. I mean, that brings me to, as a fund manager at AB, we have to worry about obviously properly managing risk of our own capital. And when it comes to, you lending out ETH or trying to earn your yield on ETH, how do you manage that risk in terms of just, stagnant ETH to yielding ETH, right? Anywhere you put your ETH, you're still going to be taking some form of risk versus the reward. How do you kind of make that calculation? Maybe what ratio of your portfolio do you have yielding versus not? Any non-financial advice, but educational, guidance to people trying to learn about managing risk when it comes to just straight up yielding ETH?
Yeah, so I think I have a pretty unique approach to my my own holdings. I am a very sophisticated market participant. One, just my experience, but two, also professionally. Like, I'm interacting with all these different protocols. I'm researching all these different protocols. I know a lot of people in the space, so I have a lot of knowledge to suss out risk of different protocols, particularly different new protocols. And also, I have a very keen understanding of a lot of the open market dynamics of a lot of these projects. And what I mean by that is you have all these decentralized projects, decentralized in a blanket sense. And when you are decentralized, you have to turn over some of the responsibilities to the market. LSTs being a simple example, if the price of the LST is more than an ETH, people will deposit into the LST and then sell the LST back for ETH. It's a free arbitrage. If the price of the LST is below ETH, they'll buy the LST and then withdraw it and get their ETH back. There is a lot of what I do is arbitraging, particularly when disruptions happen in the peg, because these are assets that are naturally very productive, very yield bearing, but also I can do what they want me to do. I can be a good market participant, help out the project, and get rewarded more for that. So, for example, whenever there's a major depeg, I'm right there and seeing if I need to get in. Renzo depegged a few months back. It went down, I think it went down like 10%. Renzo's one of the liquid restaking tokens. It went down like 10% and then it normalized to like 3%. Below peg. And I have a stack of ETH. I want to have more ETH. I know that each Renzo staked ETH token at the bottom is 1 ETH. So I will happily buy 1 ETH for 0.97 ETH. And then beyond that, there's all these different DeFi yield stuff on top of it. So for example, what I did was there's all these L2 airdrops going on. I took my ETH onto Linnea, which is another L2 where you get rewards for having your capital there. I bought the Renzo ETH at a 3% discount. I deposited it into a lending market. I borrowed ETH against it. I swapped more. I looped up, and now I'm getting like 3x exposure to the L2 yield, the staking yield, the restaking yield, the restaking airdrop, the lending market airdrop. And I'm positively arbitraging. They open up withdrawals a month later, and now they're back to 1-to-1. So I also made 3x, 3% just for doing that. So I do a lot of that stuff. It honestly amazes me that, like, I'll be on Twitter, and when something like that happens, I'll see a bunch of people being like, "Oh, it's Terra Luna all over again," which is totally untrue. Like, it's apples to oranges. It blows my mind that people who are super into this space have just don't have the capacity to understand the mechanics of a staking token versus other types of protocols, which I suppose is why these arbitrage opportunities exist. So long-winded way to say that I do yield farming with peg fluctuations or peg arbitrage.
Do you think that these arbitrage opportunities, are these $10,000 ARB opportunities, or these $100,000 ARB? If you had to scale your capital base, could you do it with $1 million? How large of these opportunities are there, and how are they available for example, this one that was 3%? Do you clip 3% over a month and then you annualize that, and that's a phenomenal yield, or kind of how do you think about the time horizon of these?
Yeah, I was wondering about the time windows as well.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I would say at least the stuff that I look at is always more than, let's say, 10K. I think these things that I'm referring to are protocols with hundreds of millions or billions of dollars worth of this asset issues. And there are limitations with what liquidity looks like on chain, especially when you're branching out to these different L2s, and particularly the newer ones. But these things, I think, always you're able to get anywhere in the 6-figure range. Once you get into high 7s, 8 figures, you start to defeat the opportunity for yourself. But I also think that if you're sitting on 8 figures, you don't necessarily need to earn, 60% on it. If you're a fund manager, that's a little different. But if you're a regular person and you're holding 8 figures, you primarily want to make sure you continue to hold 8 figures. What was the second part of the question?
I think that was.
I think scalability and time horizons.
Oh, time horizon. Yeah. So, the nice thing about like that strategy that I just described, Renzo repegged several months ago, but I'm still getting Eigenlayer airdrop, Renzo airdrop, Linnea airdrop, lending market airdrop, and I'm get staking yield and restaking yield. So I'm still keeping that there, and it's still I don't know what the actual APY is, but I'm sure it'll be good, and I'll keep it there until I have something that catches my eye, and I think that I want to go do that. But I'm typically not doing those types of rotations more than a few times a year, so it's still, it's not overly cumbersome or overly aggressive. That's kind of where you run into trouble too, is if you're constantly trying to move in and out, and that's when you screw things up.
And I mean, strategy wise, as far as like percent of your stack that you're putting at risk, if you care to say, like.
Oh, I got it all. I got it all.
Okay, so you're yielding everything. Got it.
I'm
So
yielding everything. I keep enough money in the bank account to pay rent, and the rest of it's on chain.
Yep. Right on.
There's a good tweet going around that like my mom would kill me if she knew the amount of dollars I have in my internet browser.
Yeah. No, I think it's one thing to keep your net worth on chain. I think I'm definitely there as well. But I think to then go beyond and be yielding with all of it is, I mean, it's definitely high risk. But if you're doing the deep diligence and research, like I'm sure you are, then you can get away with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely not something that I like recommend just like an average person to do. It's what I do for myself. If you're just getting, I mean, the products that we make at Bloq, Vesper and Metronome, that's more suited towards, I'm interested in crypto. I have crypto. I know I can earn yield off of it. I don't necessarily know where. I don't feel comfortable kind of doing it all myself. Those products are very good for that type of user.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, I just hopping in here. Like I think I'm that type of user. I know that I can earn a little bit more than whatever 3% is on my ETH. I know there's a lot people like yourself who are a lot better at it than I am. And I don't even want to think about it day to day. And I want to underwrite kind of the Vesper risk or the Bloq risk, but I don't want to underwrite all those underlying the other protocols. And that's kind of how I ended up using these products. Well, we've been at this for almost an hour. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but is there anything we didn't touch upon that you want to say, or is there any announcements, or I mean, you can drop the latest rare pay buy here, anything you want to break.
Yeah, I think I wanted to hear about Hemi as well, and wanted to talk about your TikTok strategy.
Okay.
Sure.
Sorry, you can. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we could chat Hemi first. Like I said, I'm not as involved with Hemi. I focus on the DeFi stuff, but I'm helping to advise on what Hemi's like DeFi TVL strategy looks like, which is a lot of the type of stuff that I'm talking about. So getting all the different LRTs onto Hemi. There's some Bitcoin restaking stuff that we want to help kind of be early adopters, pioneers of, Hemi in general, there's a shit ton of Bitcoin L2s. There's like kind of this, a lot of it feels like let's be the first to get TVL and get MO, but like all of these L2 TVL kind of staking games are like so far it's been like, okay, I'm going to deposit here for a few months, collect my airdrop, and then fuck off. So Hemi's not really positioning itself like that, given the team, given Jeff Garzik in particular, this original Bitcoin developer. There's a very technical approach. So Hemi does have a lot of unique features that do make it a sturdier Bitcoin L2, you could say. The consensus model is, I think, unique to Hemi. I don't think anyone else is doing it. They call it proof of proof, pop mining, which is essentially when your L2 rolls up the network state. We do or Hemi does all of the transaction handling, I can't think of the right words, but taking all the queued transactions and putting them into the block. That happens on the L2. That happens with like an ETH-like staking, but rolling up the network state into the L1 happens in Bitcoin, and it actually does it using Bitcoin block space. So people can submit Bitcoin layer 1 transactions that include the Hemi network state in the code of the transaction. And so we're actually anchoring the security to Bitcoin, which is one, super secure versus what a lot of other L2s are doing. Two, it's a more novel way to think about securing the network state, and it's much quicker. So as long as someone's doing it, every time we get a set of transactions, and Bitcoin has blocks every 10 minutes, the network state is securing. So if you've been on other L2s, like you go to Optimism and you want to bridge out and they say, oh, you have to wait 7 days. Not the case here. You have to wait if you want to get back to Bitcoin, or if you want to bridge out to Ethereum too, it's only on a time scale of hours, I believe. I'm not the engineer though, and I don't have the talking points. So I could be off, but I know it's a lot more secure and it's a lot quicker. There's also a Bitcoin SDK, which means you can write dApps on Hemi that are transacted with and settled on Hemi, transacted with on Hemi but settled on Bitcoin. So you can do a non-custodial Bitcoin DEX, non-custodial Bitcoin lending. The bridging architecture will be able to support different Bitcoin assets like ordinals. I don't think that most of the competitors have that full kit. So that's really exciting in terms of being like a more serious contender. And with that, Hemi, from what I can see, is getting a lot of interest from this growing class of Bitcoin DeFi in particular that wants to do it on the most serious Bitcoin L2. They want to do it on Hemi, not on some of these ones that are just doing this multi-sig staking game, and their L2 is actually just an ETH L2, but they say they're Bitcoin and they use Bitcoin. So that's all exciting. And then on the DeFi side, I'll share a bit about Vesper and Metronome in terms of what we're kind of interested in is I've referenced this in Discord. We haven't like formally introduced it, but we've been kind of speaking about it. We're working to upgrade Metronome to enable us to mint synthetic assets into other protocols. So Maker does something similar. They have this direct deposit module, which lets them mint DAI into Spark, which is their Aave fork. It allows them to mint DAI into these Morpho vaults. And the reason why we want to do that is so that we can go onto permissionless lending markets and we can mint assets against whatever collateral we want. So it's a lot of work to add new collaterals onto Metronome itself. There's also a bigger risk vector of doing that versus we can spin up an isolated vault for whatever asset. We can isolate the number of assets. The way that these other lending markets work, they can charge higher interest rates, generate more revenue, and then we can have a similar looping interface on top of that. That's to say that that's the kind of stuff that we want to carry over to Hemi as well, so that early on Hemi can have a more robust DeFi infrastructure. Still a ways away on the Hemi launch, but it should be exciting.
When you
Uh-oh.
Oh, he cut out.
He's been attacked by AI. I'm not sure. No, I think let's see. We'll see if Monty comes back. But I think Hemi is a really unique project, so that'll be a great clip. You know, you explaining that. I think it's very exciting. I have, I guess, last question about TikTok. We'll see if Monty can come back here or not. But for everyone watching, Green Jeff, the TikTok is amazing. What is it? It's Jeff the Dunker. Very, very comical. I love the shades. You got shades on and almost every single pic. You must have a good collection there. First off, what's the dunker? Who are you dunking on? And also what has been your strategy to see success? You know, I think many people think that crypto is a pretty boring subject. But I love the fact that you're getting messages out there, educating the public. It's like that's one of our number one goals. So what would be your kind of secret to success there?
Yeah. So my original Xbox gamer tag was Jeff the Baker, which was like I wanted it when I played Halo 3. I wanted to be similar to like you were killed by Bob the Builder. I came with Jeff the Baker.
Big Halo 3 guy, were you?
Yeah.
Right on. We should 1v1 on Guardian after this.
You'd kick my ass. I haven't played it in quite some time.
No.
But yeah, I was big into the custom games in particular. When Jeff the Baker's already taken, I used Jeff the Dunker, and it was already taken on TikTok. Yeah, it was kind of by accident. I like if anyone who's into crypto spends time on crypto TikTok, like you could tell like pretty quickly it's like not like a great place to be. There's a lot of scammers, there's a lot of just dumb shit, a lot of stupid people. And I made a TikTok where I made an account, I made a TikTok basically just saying everyone here's a fucking idiot. And I was wearing a robe, a Versace robe,
yep.
And it blew up. So then I was like, okay, this is my persona. So it's kind of like
welcome back, Monty.
Back.
Okay, so the
Thank
robe.
You. Sorry, the power.
The robe sparked the persona.
Yeah, so I just turned into some of it is I want to like send a message or educate, but like not in a spoon feedy way. So it's kind of like doctored up in this like douchebag persona. And then some of it is like kind of satirizing like the hustle culture, finance, bro, like grifter, influencer accounts where I'm like yelling at the camera, like, stop being poor. I'm not selling a course on the back end. I'm not selling anything. It's just for fun. But yeah, I don't post on TikTok a whole lot anymore just because like the people on it are so dumb.
Yeah. No,
like for a while I have my own Discord, which not monetized, but it's like I talk about like yield farming and stuff like that. And like I use the TikTok as a funnel for that, but like I don't necessarily want those people on my Discord. Like there's a certain level of education I want someone to come in with before they're joining my community and stuff. And so I still post on there a little bit from time to time just for fun, but I don't get value out of it really.
Hell yeah, Jeff the Dunker. So make a persona, don't be consistent, tell people they're stupid, and you guys will blow up too. I think that's amazing. I got one last speed round. If you're up for it, we got 60 seconds. So every question will be one sentence or less. Okay.
Okay.
And it's just shouts out to Mr. Pomp. You know, I've probably listened to at least 1 million hours of his podcast. He always has a speed round with his guests. So, all right, what excites you most about the Bloq?
About Bloq,
yeah.
We have so many different projects that right now are independent, but in the future they can all work closely together, and we can kind of establish our own on-chain ecosystem.
Okay, right on. One DeFi project you're most excited about outside of Bloq?
I think Athena is really exciting in that it's a new type of primitive. It still kind of has some battle testing to go. If they succeed and we get more of it, then that'll be great for DeFi. That was more than one sentence, I think. That was a run-on sentence.
You're doing good with the run-ons. One non-DeFi project you're most excited about outside of Bloq?
I am a fan of. Oh, there's many to choose from.
Besides
I've been on-
Mooncats.
I've been on Farcaster a lot. I like Farcaster and Warpcast. It's a lot of fun.
Right on. Yeah, we're huge on Farcaster. We run a lot of channels there. We're at AB1. We'll give you a follow. We run the education channel, the base channel. Farcaster is definitely, that's a great answer. All right, last one. Aliens, real or fake?
Real.
All right, we're closing on that. No hesitation. All right, thank you, Mr. Zane, Mr. Green Jeff. We really appreciate your time. Looks like Monty's frozen in time here somewhere. But I think this was a great episode, and we really appreciate it, man.
Great. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Right on.